Hi everyone, I'm Carl Azus. Thank you for joining us for a new week of CNN Student News. Today we're going to start with something that actually started just more than 2 years ago. Unrest in the Middle Eastern nation of Syria began with protests, turned into a civil war. In 2011, some Syrians were protesting their president, Bashar al-Assad. They wanted him out of power. Assad and his government responded with force. The Syrian military started fighting the protesters. Eventually, the opposition got armed and began fighting back. Syrian officials call the rebels terrorists. 2 years later, Bashar al-Assad is still president. The fighting hasn't stopped. International aid groups accuse both sides, the Syrian military and the rebels, of abusing human rights. More than 70,000 Syrians are reported to have been killed. Now, we say reported because it's not possible to confirm that number or to confirm some of the accounts of violence. That's because Syria hasn't given CNN or any other international news organizations free access inside the country. The violence in Syria involves one country. What about tension between two nations? Diplomacy, trying to work things out peacefully, is usually the preferred strategy. But governments have to prepare for the possibility of conflict. And Chris Lawrence has more on that when it comes to the U.S. and North Korea.
If a nuclear missile is ever fired at the United States, this is the best hope to stop it. 30 interceptor missiles, which can be launched from ground silos in Alaska and California. Now the Pentagon is deploying up to 14 more.
The reason that we're doing what we're doing and the reason we're advancing our program here for Homeland Security is to not take any chances, is to stay ahead of the threat.
North Korea tested a long-range missile in December. It conducted its third nuclear test in February, and just this month threatened a preemptive nuclear strike on the U.S. That caught the Pentagon's attention. But as far back as the State of the Union speech, President Obama said the U.S. would
strengthen our own missile defense and lead the world in taking firm action in response to these threats.
But Republican congressional sources say the president's actions have been anything but firm. In 2011, the administration mothballed one Alaskan missile field, arguing intelligence showed there wasn't enough of a threat. A short-sighted move, say the congressional sources. Quote, the intel didn't change. This is right where we expected North Korea to be. And that is in possession of a missile that could travel nearly 5,000 miles, in theory, since North Korea has never successfully launched a long-range ICBM.
I think what you see here is mainly a political signal to North Korea that no one's going to be intimidated by their December launch and then the subsequent nuclear test.
The existing interceptors have had technological problems and haven't performed as planned. The Pentagon is testing a new missile and won't buy the additional 14 until officials are sure they can fly.
We spend $10 billion a year on missile defense. We spent about $250 billion over the last few decades. We still aren't anywhere close to a system that can actually protect the United States from a determined adversary. Yes, I'm saying we're wasting our money.
All right, what we're covering next today is also about defense and protection. But this time we're talking about head injuries in sports, concussions. There are new laws and regulations in place about treating players who might have a concussion. Scientists and doctors have developed new equipment to help prevent these injuries. Susan Candiati looks at one league that's considering a more controversial decision.
These two boxers are only sparring, but in a real match, a shot to the head can flatten an opponent. Since the mid-'80s, amateur boxers have been required to use headgear for protection. Seems to make sense. But the AIBA, which governs amateur boxing worldwide, is throwing a knockout punch to headgear for elite boxers aged 19 and older.
The head becomes a larger target with the headgear. The boxer, because of the sides of the headgear, cannot see the punches coming from the side, so he's more likely to get hit with them.
Making concussions twice as likely, according to two independent studies cited by the AIBA. New York boxing trainer Colin Morgan sees no need for headgear.
Well, over the years, I haven't seen it made a difference.
Neither has boxer Rob Piela. He owns New York's Gotham Gym.
I think it's given too much credit as far as the protection that it really does offer.
But boxer Curtis Jones sees it differently. He suffered concussions in the past.
All I remember is like them raising my hand at the end of the fight. And I was like, what happened? And like I heard seashells.
Jones says while headgear may not prevent concussions, he worries about the long-term effects of cuts and head trauma.
In every fight, you're cut till like your skin and actually deteriorates. So I think they should keep headgear in amateur boxing.
Sports medicine Dr. Kevin Curley wants to see the latest and still unpublished study before reaching any conclusions.
I would have preferred that it goes through the peer review process and have a little more discussion before going forward with such a novel idea and pretty dramatic idea.
The AIBA acknowledges headgear prevents cuts, but thinks curbing concussions is a more important goal.
Too many concussions are bad, and if we can cut our concussion rate down, we ought to take every step aggressively to do it.
Each side in that story argues that its idea is designed to make the sport safer. We'd like to hear your idea. If you're already on Facebook, talk to us at facebook.com/CNN Student News. Tell us how you'd make boxing or any sport safer.
See if you can ID me. I was born in Britain near the end of the 4th century. I was kidnapped and enslaved when I was a teenager. After my escape, I became a priest, and I'm credited with bringing Christianity to Ireland. I'm St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland.
Ireland's not much bigger than West Virginia, and fewer than 5 million people live there. And yet, on the day that honors Ireland's patron saint, Patrick, about 133 million people in the U.S. celebrate. Some wear green, some wear silly hats, some make special trips to one of the 7 U.S. places named Shamrock or one of the 13 named Dublin. But millions see this, the St. Patrick's Day Parade in New York City, which has been going on since 1762. Or this, the annual greening of the Chicago River, which takes 40 pounds of dye to do. Roughly 1 out of every 10 Americans has an Irish ancestor, which shows you how influential the island has been on a nation across the Atlantic. For those celebrating in the Emerald Isle, one thing they don't have to worry about is snakes. Legend has it that St. Patrick himself drove them out. Some believe it, some don't, but consider this. There are 2,900 species of snakes in the world. None of them are indigenous to Ireland. Is that proof? I wish we knew for sure. Okay, on March 9th, students at the University of Missouri started dancing at noon. They stopped at 1:06 in the morning, 13 hours, and more than $150,000 later. The dance marathon, like others around the country, has been going on for years. It's based on a simple mission. Quote, "We dance for those who can't."
Dance Marathon is a part of the Children's Miracle Network Hospital's umbrella. And so we're one of 150 dance marathons across the nation. It's a group of young people, mostly high school and college age students who give up a ton of time, energy, and money in order to change lives and to make miracles happen.
You're really on your feet for 13.1 hours, really just dancing. It's a lot of fun. You feel good about it at the end of the day because it's a blast.
We ask our dancers not to sit down for the entirety of the event. Lots of things for them to do. If they don't want to dance, and then it's on them. But if other people want to dance, music's still going and they can keep on jamming.
Now that I'm here, I know that I'm doing this for these great kids.
It's really neat that it's all these students doing all of this work. I think they're also a little blown away by the fact that, we're college students.
Our Before We Go segment, and yes, our puns can get kind of cheesy. Today, definitely one of those times. It's the U.S. Cheese Championship. This thing is a monster event. It started with 1,700 entries. Some of these samples really know how to bring it. I mean, this contest is very close. 16 cheeses made the cut for the finals. In the end, the entry that blew away the competition was an aged Gouda cheese from a farm in Wisconsin. So I guess this contest was one way to separate the Gouda from the great. You might find all our cheese puns grating. Maybe you're fed up with them, but hey, we did the best we could. Woo! All right, teachers, we want you to tell us how we did. Share your feedback on all of today's show on our homepage. We'll see everyone back here tomorrow for more CNN Student News.